My name is Ivy. I am 29 years old, and I still remember standing in my empty living room the night my husband walked out. He left with my best friend, the woman I had trusted since 6th grade. I thought that was the end of everything. But then a letter arrived from a lawyer. My grandmother had left me $70,000 in secret. That money did not just save me, it transformed my entire life. Before I share how everything changed, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Because what my grandmother left me was not just money. It was the key to a life I never knew I deserved. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee in a modest house on a quiet street lined with oak trees. My father Calvin worked as an electrician, spending his days climbing ladders and fixing wires in old buildings across the city. My mother Darlene worked as a cashier at the local supermarket, always coming home with stories about difficult customers and sale items she had set aside for us. My older brother Preston was 3 years ahead of me, and by the time I was in high school, he had already moved to Memphis to start his own family. But the person who shaped me the most was my grandmother Eleanor. She lived on a small piece of land outside Nashville about 40 minutes from our house. Her property had a chicken coop, a vegetable garden, and an old farmhouse with creaky floors and windows that let in the morning light just right. Every summer I stayed with her for weeks at a time. She taught me how to collect eggs without disturbing the hens, how to tell when tomatoes were ready to pick, and most importantly, how to bake. Grandma Eleanor made the best apple pie I have ever tasted. Her buttermilk biscuits melted in your mouth. Her cinnamon rolls were legendary at church potlucks. She would stand beside me in that tiny kitchen, guiding my hands as I rolled out dough, always patient, always encouraging. She had a saying she repeated often: "Save what you can, give what you can, and never depend on anyone but yourself." I did not fully understand those words then. I would later. I graduated from college with a degree in hospitality management. It was practical, my parents said. It would lead to stable jobs. So I pushed aside my dreams of opening a bakery someday and took a position at a hotel in downtown Nashville. The work was fine. I liked helping guests, solving problems, making sure events ran smoothly. Within a few years, I had been promoted to assistant manager. Life was moving in the right direction. Or so I thought. I was 23 when I met Grant. It happened at a music festival in the park one of those warm September evenings when the air smells like barbecue and the stage lights up the night sky. I was standing near the back of the crowd swaying to a country song when a tall man with curly brown hair and a confident smile walked up to me. He said my smile caught his attention from across the field. I laughed and told him that was the cheesiest line I had ever heard. He laughed too, and somehow we ended up talking for the rest of the night. His name was Grant. He was a software engineer who had just moved to Nashville from Atlanta for a new job. He told me about his work, his plans, his dreams. He wanted stability, a house, a family, a life built on hard work and commitment. Everything he said matched what I wanted too. It felt like fate. We started dating, and Grant was everything I had hoped for. He opened car doors for me. He remembered little details like my favorite coffee order and the name of my childhood pet. He sent good morning texts that made me smile. 6 months into our relationship, we were standing on Broadway Street surrounded by neon lights and live music pouring out of honky-tonks when he looked into my eyes and told me he loved me. I said it back without hesitation. When it came time to introduce Grant to my best friend, I was excited. Meredith and I had been inseparable since 6th grade. We met on the first day of middle school when she sat next to me in homeroom and whispered that my hair looked nice. From that moment, we were bonded. We survived awkward teenage years together. We cried over boys together. We celebrated each other's victories and held each other through failures. Meredith was beautiful. Long black hair striking features a presence that commanded attention when she walked into a room. She worked as a freelance makeup artist doing weddings and photo shoots. She was confident in ways I never was. Sometimes I felt plain standing next to her, but I never let jealousy poison our friendship. She was my person, and I was hers. That is what I believed. Grant met Meredith at my birthday party. I watched them shake hands, exchange pleasantries. Grant was polite, charming as always. But I noticed something. His eyes lingered on Meredith just a moment too long. When she walked away, he watched her go. I pushed the thought aside immediately. I was being paranoid. Grant loved me. Meredith was my best friend. There was nothing to worry about. After 2 years of dating, Grant proposed. He did it at a nice restaurant downtown, getting down on one knee between the appetizers and the main course. I cried happy tears and said yes before he finished asking. We planned a small wedding at a barn venue outside the city. Meredith was my maid of honor, of course. She helped me pick my dress, planned my bachelorette party, stood beside me at the altar. My grandmother Eleanor could not make it to the wedding. Her health had been declining, and the trip was too much for her. But she sent a handwritten card that I still have. My sweet Ivy, always remember your worth. Love, Grandma. I tucked that card into my wedding album, not knowing how much those words would mean to me later. Grant and I settled into married life. We rented a townhouse in East Nashville, decorated it together, made it feel like home. I kept working at the hotel, climbing slowly toward higher positions. Grant worked long hours at his tech company, but always came home with stories to share. We talked about saving for a house, maybe starting a family in a few years. I felt like I had built exactly the life I wanted. I had no idea that the two people I trusted most were about to destroy everything. The changes started slowly, so gradually that I almost did not notice them at first. Grant and I had been married for about 2 years when things began to shift. He started working later, coming home tired and distracted. When I asked about his day, he gave short answers. Just busy. Big project. You would not understand the tech stuff. He used that last phrase often, as if my inability to code meant I could not comprehend anything about his life. I tried not to take it personally. Every marriage has rough patches. I read articles about keeping the spark alive, planned special dinners, suggested weekend getaways. Grant always had an excuse. Maybe next month. Work is crazy right now. I kept telling myself things would improve once his project was finished. His phone habits changed too. The device was always face down on the table. He set it to silent mode constantly. If it buzzed during dinner, he would glance at the screen and then flip it over quickly. Once I asked who was texting him so much. He said it was just work group chats. Nothing important. I wanted to believe him. Around the same time, Meredith began coming over more frequently. She had broken up with her boyfriend Jordan after 2 years together. She was heartbroken, lonely, struggling. My apartment is so empty, she would say. I just need some company. I understood. I had been there for her through breakups before. That is what best friends do. Meredith started showing up several evenings a week. She would bring wine and we would watch movies together. Sometimes she stayed so late that she crashed on our couch. I did not mind. I wanted to support her through this difficult time. And honestly, with Grant being so distant, I appreciated the company too. At first, Grant seemed annoyed by Meredith's constant presence. He would retreat to the bedroom early, claiming he had work emails to catch up on. But gradually his attitude changed. He started joining us in the living room. He laughed at Meredith's jokes, engaged in her conversations. They discovered they both loved the same obscure video games. They debated about music with an intensity that surprised me. I told myself this was a good thing. My husband and my best friend were finally getting along. That would make holidays easier, gatherings more fun. I ignored the small voice in my head that whispered something was wrong. One evening I went to bed early. I had a headache and the wine was making me drowsy. I left Grant and Meredith in the living room watching some action movie. When I woke up the next morning, I found them both in the kitchen. Meredith was pouring coffee. Grant was leaning against the counter, still in his clothes from the night before. It was too late to drive home, Meredith explained. I crashed on the couch. Grant nodded in agreement, but he did not meet my eyes. Something cold settled in my stomach. I pushed it down, told myself I was overreacting. They were just friends. Nothing had happened. But I started paying closer attention after that. I noticed Grant smiling at his phone, the kind of smile he used to reserve for me. When I asked who he was texting, he said Tyler from work. Funny meme. But I saw the screen before he turned it away. The contact name started with M. I noticed Meredith finding excuses to touch Grant. A hand on his arm when she laughed. Adjusting his collar when it was not crooked. Small things that could be dismissed as friendliness. But they piled up. One afternoon I came home from work early. The hotel had been slow and my manager sent me home. I stopped at the grocery store first, thinking I would make a nice dinner. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Meredith's car parked outside. I walked into the house calling out a greeting. No response. I found them in the living room sitting on the couch. They were close. Too close. When they heard me, they sprang apart like teenagers caught by a parent. Meredith stammered something about picking up a jacket she had left behind. Grant agreed too quickly. She was just leaving. I nodded, pretended to believe them. But that night, lying next to my husband in the darkness, I felt a wall between us that had not been there before. In the middle of all this confusion and suspicion, I received devastating news. My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was shaking. It was Grandma Eleanor. Her heart was failing. The doctor said it could be days, maybe weeks. I needed to come quickly. I took emergency leave from work and drove to the hospital. Grant said he could not come. Work deadlines. I understand, I told him, even though I did not. My grandmother was dying and my husband could not take a single day off. I found Grandma Eleanor in a hospital bed looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed. But when she saw me, her eyes lit up. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My sweet girl," she whispered, "I have been saving something for you, for when you really need it." I did not understand what she meant. I thought the medication was making her confused. She had lived simply her whole life. A small house, a modest garden. What could she possibly have saved? "The lawyer has everything," she continued. "Promise me you will use it wisely." I promised, tears streaming down my face. I stayed by her bedside for 3 days, holding her hand, reading her favorite poems aloud, telling her stories about my life. On the third night, she fell asleep with a peaceful smile on her face. She did not wake up. I buried my grandmother on a rainy Tuesday. Alone. Grant had another deadline he could not miss. Meredith texted her condolences, but said she had a wedding gig that day. I stood at the graveside with only my parents and my brother watching the casket lower into the earth, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. What I did not know was that in a few weeks I would be burying my marriage too. 3 weeks passed after Grandma Eleanor's funeral. I moved through those days in a fog of grief, going to work, coming home, trying to reconnect with a husband who seemed to drift further away each day. Grant was more distant than ever. He worked late almost every night. When he was home, he was glued to his phone, laughing at texts he never explained. I kept telling myself it was stress. He was dealing with his own pressures. Everyone grieves differently. I made excuses because making excuses was easier than facing the truth. On a Friday afternoon, my manager at the hotel called me into her office. The weekend event had been canceled, she said. We were overstaffed. She sent me home early with a kind smile and told me to take care of myself. I looked exhausted, she said. I needed rest. I decided to make the most of the unexpected free time. I stopped at the grocery store and bought ingredients for Grant's favorite meal. Steak asparagus, twice baked potatoes. I picked up a bottle of wine and some candles. I would set a nice table, cook a beautiful dinner, and maybe, just maybe, my husband and I could find our way back to each other. I drove home with hope flickering in my chest. The house was quiet when I walked in. Grant's car was in the driveway, so he must have come home early too. Maybe that was a sign. Maybe today would be the turning point. I set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and noticed the light on upstairs in the bedroom. I heard sounds, voices, laughter. My heart began to pound. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The bedroom door was slightly open. I pushed it wider, and then I saw them, Grant and Meredith, in my bed, in my house, in the life I had built. They were so wrapped up in each other that they did not notice me at first. Meredith was laughing, her black hair spread across my pillow. "She has no idea," she said. "You are such a good actor." Grant smirked. "Ivy is too trusting. That is her problem." The grocery bag slipped from my hand. The wine bottle shattered on the hardwood floor, red liquid spreading like blood. They turned toward the door. Their faces went white. Ivy, Grant stammered, scrambling to cover himself with the sheets. "This is not what it looks like. I can explain." Meredith pulled the blanket up to her chin, her eyes wide with something that might have been fear or guilt or both. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt strangely calm, as if I were watching this scene from outside my own body. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe some part of me had been preparing for this moment without realizing it. "How long?" I asked. My voice came out steady. Grant tried to speak, but I cut him off. "How long has this been going on?" Silence stretched between us. Finally, Meredith answered. "About 8 months." 8 months. I did the math in my head. That meant it started around the time she broke up with Jordan. Around the time she began spending every evening at our house. Around the time my husband started working late and avoiding my eyes. "Ivy, please," Grant said. "It just happened. We did not plan this." I looked at him. This man I had married, had trusted, had built dreams with. Then I looked at Meredith. The woman I had called my best friend for 17 years. The woman who stood beside me at my wedding. The woman who knew all my secrets, all my fears, all my hopes. "You did not plan to sleep with my best friend for 8 months," I said. "In our bed, while I was working to help pay for this house." Grant had no answer for that. Meredith started crying. "Ivy, I am so sorry. I know you hate me right now, but I never meant to hurt you." I held up my hand. Do not you dare apologize to me right now." I turned to Grant. "I want you out. Tonight." He protested. "This is my house too. You cannot just throw me out. Actually, the lease is in my name. I was the one with the stable job when we moved here. I was the one who signed the paperwork. You have 1 hour. Take whatever you need. I will send the rest." I walked downstairs, my legs moving automatically. I heard them scrambling above me, the sounds of drawers opening and closing, hushed arguments. An hour later, Grant came down with a suitcase. Meredith was beside him, her makeup smeared, her designer bag clutched to her chest. They walked past me without a word. The front door closed behind them. I heard a car engine start and fade into the distance. And then I was alone. I sank to the floor of my living room. The beautiful living room I had decorated with such care. The home I had created with a man who never loved me the way I loved him. Only then did I let myself cry. I cried for my broken marriage. I cried for my lost friendship. I cried for my grandmother who would never call me sweet girl again. I cried until I had nothing left. But somewhere in the empty hours of that night, something shifted inside me. I thought about Grandma Eleanor's words. Never depend on anyone but yourself. I had depended on Grant for happiness. I had depended on Meredith for support, and they had both betrayed me. I would not make that mistake again. In one night, I lost my husband and my best friend of 17 years. I thought that was the lowest point of my life. But life had one more surprise waiting for me. And this time, it was not a bad one. A week passed after Grant left. 7 days of waking up alone, going through the motions at work, coming home to an empty house that still smelled like betrayal. I had not changed the sheets on the bed. I could not bring myself to sleep there at all. Instead, I camped out on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching television I did not really see. On a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. A number I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Ivy Patterson. The voice was professional, measured. Speaking. This is Harold Finch. I am an attorney here in Nashville. I am calling regarding the estate of Eleanor May Thompson, your grandmother. I sat up straighter, confused. My grandmother's estate, Grandma Eleanor lived simply. She had a small house, some chickens, a garden. What could there possibly be to discuss? I think you should come to my office, Mr. Finch said. There is something your grandmother left specifically for you. We scheduled an appointment for the following afternoon. I spent the next 24 hours wondering what Grandma Eleanor could have possibly left behind. Maybe some family jewelry I did not know about. Maybe her recipe collection. Maybe just sentimental items that required legal processing. The law office was in an old building downtown, the kind with high ceilings and wood paneling that smelled like history. Harold Finch was a man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand warmly and invited me to sit. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, he said, settling into his chair behind a large desk covered in papers. She came to me 10 years ago to set this up. Set what up? He slid a thick envelope across the desk toward me. Inside I found several legal documents and a letter written in Grandma Eleanor's familiar handwriting. Mr. Finch began to explain. For over 40 years, your grandmother saved money in secret. She sold eggs from her chickens at the farmer's market. She sold vegetables from her garden. She took in sewing and mending work. Small amounts here and there that added up over time. She invested wisely, kept her expenses minimal, and never told a soul. I stared at him, struggling to process what he was saying. How much are we talking about? $70,000. The number hung in the air between us. $70,000. My grandmother, who wore the same 3 dresses in rotation. My grandmother who reused aluminum foil until it fell apart. My grandmother who gave me $5 for my birthday every year and made me feel like a millionaire. She wanted this to go to you, Mr. Finch continued. Only you. Not divided among family members. Not given to charity. Specifically to you. Why me? He smiled gently. I think her letter might explain that better than I can. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter and began to read. My dearest Ivy, if you are reading this, I am no longer with you. But please do not cry for me. I lived a full life, and my greatest joy was watching you grow into the woman you have become. I saved this money for you because I always saw something special in you. A kindness. A strength you do not even know you have. You were always different from the others. When Preston wanted to play video games, you wanted to help me in the kitchen. When other children complained about visiting their grandmother, you counted the days until summer. I know life will throw challenges at you. People will disappoint you. Hearts will break. But this money is my gift to give you a fresh start, whatever that looks like. Do not use it to pay someone else's bills. Do not use it to fix someone else's mistakes. Use it for you, for your dreams. Remember what I always told you. Never depend on anyone but yourself. I believe in you, my sweet girl. More than you know. All my love. Grandma Eleanor. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. Mr. Finch quietly pushed a box of tissues toward me. She really loved you, he said softly. I know I managed to say. I just wish I had known about this while she was alive. I wish I could have thanked her. She did not want thanks. She wanted you to be happy. She told me once that you would know exactly what to do with the money when the time came. She trusted your judgment completely. I left the law office an hour later with a check for $70,000 tucked into my purse. My mind was spinning. This money could pay off the credit card debt that Grant had accumulated. It could cover rent for years. It could fund a vacation to forget all my troubles. But Grandma Eleanor's words echoed in my head. Use it for you, for your dreams. And suddenly, standing on that downtown sidewalk, I knew exactly what I was going to do. For as long as I could remember, I had dreamed of opening a bakery. A little shop where people could come for fresh bread and warm pie and the kind of treats that Grandma Eleanor used to make. I had pushed that dream aside because it was not practical. Because everyone said small businesses fail. Because Grant had laughed when I mentioned it once and called it a pipe dream. But Grant was gone now, and $70,000 was sitting in my bank account. And my grandmother from beyond the grave was telling me to chase my dreams. I was going to open a bakery, and I was going to make Grandma Eleanor proud. I quit my job at the hotel 3 weeks after receiving the inheritance. My manager was shocked. "You are one of our best," she said. "Are you sure about this?" I told her I had never been more sure of anything in my life. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning, learning, and working harder than I had ever worked before. I researched everything I could about starting a small business. I read books about restaurant management, studied health code regulations, learned about permits and licenses and insurance. I found a nonprofit organization called SCORE that offered free mentoring for small business owners. They connected me with a woman named Barbara, a retired restaurant owner who agreed to guide me through the process. Barbara was in her 70s with sharp eyes and decades of wisdom. She reviewed my business plan, asked tough questions, and never sugarcoated her feedback. "This is solid," she told me after our third meeting. "But it will not be easy. Opening a bakery is one of the hardest things you can do." "I do not need easy," I replied. "I just need possible." She smiled at that. "Then let us make it happen." Finding the right location took weeks of searching. I needed somewhere affordable, but accessible in a neighborhood that would support a small bakery. I finally found it in East Nashville, a rapidly developing area full of coffee shops, boutiques, and young professionals looking for local gems. The space was small, just 800 square feet, but it had good bones. Big windows that let in natural light. A back area that could be converted into a kitchen. Rent that fit within my budget. I signed the lease on a rainy afternoon in March. Standing in that empty space surrounded by dust and possibility, I felt something I had not felt in months. Hope. The renovations took everything I had. I did as much work myself as I could to save money. I spent weekends painting walls a warm cream color that reminded me of Grandma Eleanor's kitchen. I found rustic wooden shelving at an antique market and hauled it back in a borrowed truck. I scrubbed floors until my arms ached. My family came to help whenever they could. My mother, Darlene, drove down from Nashville every Saturday with sandwiches and encouragement. My father, Calvin, checked the electrical systems and made sure everything was up to code. My brother, Preston, drove in from Memphis one weekend and built a beautiful counter out of reclaimed wood. It became the centerpiece of the shop. The kitchen equipment took the biggest chunk of my budget. Commercial ovens, industrial mixers, refrigeration units. I bought some things new and some things used. I learned to negotiate prices and spot good deals. Every dollar mattered. While construction progressed, I perfected my recipes. I spent nights in my apartment kitchen testing and retesting. Grandma Eleanor's apple pie, her buttermilk biscuits, her legendary cinnamon rolls. I added my own creations too. Lemon bars with the perfect balance of sweet and tart. Chocolate chip cookies with a hint of sea salt. Banana bread so moist it practically melted in your mouth. I invited neighbors to taste test everything. I wrote down their feedback meticulously. I adjusted recipes, tried different ingredient ratios, baked batch after batch, until everything was exactly right. Finally, 4 months after receiving my grandmother's gift, I was ready to open. I named the bakery Eleanor's Sweet Spot. The logo featured a simple pie with a heart-shaped crust design. Above the door, I hung a small sign with Grandma's favorite phrase, "Never depend on anyone but yourself." The grand opening was a small affair. I invited my family, a few neighbors, some of my old co-workers from the hotel. No Meredith, of course. That chapter of my life was closed. The morning of the opening, I stood behind the counter surrounded by displays of fresh-baked goods and fought back tears. Not sad tears this time. These were tears of disbelief and gratitude. I had actually done it. I had taken my grandmother's gift and turned it into something real. The first customer through the door was an elderly woman named Lucille who lived 2 blocks away. She ordered a slice of apple pie and a cup of coffee. I watched nervously as she took her first bite. Her eyes closed. She chewed slowly. Then she looked at me with wonder. "This apple pie," she said. "It reminds me of my mother's." "Where did you learn to bake like this?" "From my grandmother," I told her. "She taught me everything. She taught you well. I will be back." And Lucille kept her promise. She became a regular customer, coming in every Tuesday and Thursday. She brought friends with her. Those friends brought their families. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. Within 6 months, Eleanor's Sweet Spot had a loyal following. People came from across the city for the apple pie. Food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. A local magazine included us in a list of hidden gems. Revenue grew steadily. I hired my first employee, a college student named Casey, who was eager to learn baking. 1 year after opening the bakery was profitable. Not hugely profitable, but enough to pay all the bills, hire more help, and start putting money back into savings. I had done what everyone said was impossible. I had built something from nothing. In 1 year, I went from a heartbroken woman crying on her living room floor to a business owner with a growing customer base and a dream that was finally coming true. But the universe was not done with me yet, because that is when Grant and Meredith decided to reappear. I heard about their downfall through the grapevine. My brother Preston had stayed in touch with some mutual acquaintances, and information filtered back to me whether I wanted it or not. After leaving my house, Grant and Meredith had moved in together almost immediately. They posted smiling photos on social media. #NewBeginnings. #soulmates. It should have hurt to see, but mostly I felt numb. They could have each other. They deserved each other. But fairy tales built on betrayal rarely have happy endings. 3 months after they got together, Grant was laid off from his tech company. Downsizing, they called it. He struggled to find another position. The tech market was competitive, and his skills were not as unique as he had always believed. Weeks of job searching turned into months. His savings dwindled. Meredith's career suffered too. In the small world of Nashville's wedding industry, word got around fast. Several clients canceled when they heard about the affair. Former friends distanced themselves. The steady stream of bookings that had supported her freelance lifestyle slowed to a trickle. Without 2 incomes, they could not afford their nice apartment. They moved to a cheaper place. Then an even cheaper one. The smiling social media posts stopped. The couple who had destroyed my life was now struggling to hold their own together. None of this brought me joy. I had expected to feel satisfied by their misfortune, but I did not. I just felt disconnected from it all, like watching a movie about strangers. Then one Wednesday afternoon, the door to Eleanor's Sweet Spot opened, and Grant walked in. I was behind the counter arranging a display of fresh muffins. I looked up at the sound of the bell and froze. There he was, my ex-husband, in my bakery. He looked different, thinner. His clothes hung loosely, and his face was pale. The confident man who had once swept me off my feet at a music festival now looked defeated. "Ivy," he said. "Wow, this place is amazing." I set down the muffin tray, carefully keeping my expression neutral. "What do you want, Grant? Can we talk, please? Just 5 minutes." I glanced around the shop. A few customers sat at tables, sipping coffee and enjoying their pastries. Casey was in the back, pulling cookies from the oven. I did not want to cause a scene. "I am busy," I said. "Make it quick." He nodded and began talking rapidly. Things with Meredith had not worked out. They had broken up 2 weeks earlier. She blamed him for everything, for losing his job, for their financial problems, for the way their relationship crumbled under pressure. "I realized I made the biggest mistake of my life," he said. "Leaving you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was an idiot. I was selfish." I listened without interrupting. Let him get it all out. "I want another chance." He continued, his eyes pleading. "I know I do not deserve it, but if you could find it in your heart to forgive me, I would spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I still love you, Ivy. I never stopped." The words hung in the air between us. Once they would have meant everything to me. Once I would have done anything to hear Grant say he wanted me back. But that woman was gone. I was everything I said slowly. That is what you are telling me. Then why was I not enough? He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I nodded. That is what I thought. The answer is no. Grant, there is no second chance. Not now, not ever. Ivy, please. I am struggling. I need you. You need me because you have nothing else, I said. Not because you actually want me. There is a difference. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. The quiet, accommodating woman he had married had been replaced by someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. Leave, I said, and do not come back. He left without another word. A week later, Meredith reached out. A text message appeared on my phone. Ivy, I know you hate me, but can we please meet? I need to explain. I did not owe her anything. I could have ignored the message, blocked her number, pretended she did not exist. But something in me wanted closure. I needed to look at her face and understand how she could have done what she did. I agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop downtown. Meredith was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked nothing like the confident, glamorous woman I had known for 17 years. Her makeup was minimal. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. I sat across from her and waited. I am so sorry, she began, immediately her voice cracking. I know those words mean nothing, but I am. You are right, I said. They mean nothing. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was jealous of you, Ivy. I know that sounds crazy, but it is true. You always seem to have everything together. The stable job, the nice husband, the loving family. I wanted what you had. So you took my husband. She flinched at the harshness of my words. I was selfish, stupid, desperate. Jordan had just broken up with me and I felt so worthless. Grant paid attention to me, made me feel special. I know that is no excuse. It is not. I ruined the only real friendship I ever had. She continued sobbing now. I think about it every day. About what I lost. Not Grant. I never really loved him. But you. Your friendship was the most valuable thing in my life and I threw it away. I sat back in my chair studying this woman who had betrayed me so deeply. I did not see a villain. I saw someone broken, lost, drowning in the consequences of her own choices. Meredith, I said finally, I forgive you. Her head snapped up, hope flickering in her eyes. But I do not want you in my life, I continued. Some things once broken cannot be repaired. I wish you well. I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for. But you cannot find it through me. I stood up from the table. Take care of yourself, I said. And I walked out of that coffee shop without looking back. Grant wanted me back. Meredith wanted my forgiveness. They both expected me to still be the pushover I used to be. But I was not that woman anymore, and I never would be again. 2 years have passed since I opened Eleanor's Sweet Spot. Sometimes I still cannot believe how much has changed. The bakery has grown beyond anything I imagined when I stood in that empty space with a dream and $70,000. Last year I opened a second location in Germantown, a charming neighborhood with tree-lined streets and families who love fresh-baked bread. I now employ 10 people, including a head baker who trained at culinary school and brings her own creativity to our menu. The numbers still surprise me when I see them written down. Last year's revenue approached $300,000. After expenses, I made enough to buy a small condo in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms and a balcony where I drink my coffee in the mornings. But it is mine. Every square foot of it. Purchased with money I earned myself. I drive a reliable car that I bought outright, no payments hanging over my head. I have savings again. Investments. A retirement account. Security that nobody can take away from me. Beyond the financial success, I have rebuilt my life in ways that matter more than money. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my marriage. I made new friends through the bakery customers who became confidants, fellow business owners who became collaborators. I have a community now, people who show up for me the way I show up for them. I even found love again, though I was not looking for it. His name is Weston. I met him at the farmer's market where I sell pies on weekends. He runs a small organic farm outside the city and supplies produce to several Nashville restaurants. He approached my booth one Saturday morning to buy a loaf of bread and ended up staying to talk for an hour. Weston is nothing like Grant. He is quiet where Grant was loud. He listens more than he speaks. He does not make grand promises or flashy gestures. Instead, he shows up consistently. He remembers the small things. He treats me like a partner, not a supporting character in his story. We have been dating for almost a year now. We take things slow, neither of us in a rush to define what we are. Some evenings he comes to the bakery after closing and helps me clean up. Some weekends I drive out to his farm and help feed the chickens. It reminds me of summers with Grandma Eleanor. I have learned that real love does not look like fireworks and fairy tales. It looks like two people choosing each other day after day through the ordinary moments that make up a life. As for Grant and Meredith, their stories continued without me. Grant eventually moved back to Atlanta to live with his parents. Last I heard, he was working a sales job and trying to get back on his feet. I hope he finds what he's looking for. I truly do. But that is no longer my concern. Meredith moved to Los Angeles for a fresh start. She posts occasionally on social media photos of sunny beaches and new beginnings. Whether she found peace there, I do not know. I unfollowed her long ago. Neither of them has contacted me again. Perhaps they finally understood that some doors once closed stay closed forever. Every year on Grandma Eleanor's birthday, I close the bakery early. I drive out to the cemetery where she is buried carrying a slice of apple pie made from her recipe. I sit on the grass beside her headstone and talk to her like she is still there. I tell her about the bakery, about the customers who have become like family, about the young employees I am teaching to bake just like she taught me. I tell her about Weston, about how I think she would have liked him. I tell her about the challenges and triumphs, the hard days and the good ones. You gave me $70,000, Grandma, I told her on my last visit. But what you really gave me was permission to believe in myself. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and wildflowers. I wish you could see this, I continued. I wish you could taste the pie from your recipe being sold to hundreds of people every week. I wish you could meet Casey and the other bakers and see what your legacy has become. I think you would be proud. I hope you are proud. A butterfly landed on her headstone for just a moment before fluttering away. I chose to believe it was her answer. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over when I found Grant and Meredith together. I thought losing my husband and my best friend in one night meant I had nothing left. But I was wrong. What I lost was the illusion of a life. What I gained was the real one. My grandmother gave me $70,000. But more importantly, she gave me the courage to start over. She believed in me before I believed in myself. She saw potential I did not know I had. I learned that betrayal, as painful as it is, can be a gift. It shows you who people really are, and it forces you to see who you really are. Grant saw me as someone to settle down with a safe choice, a supporting player in his life. Meredith saw me as someone to envy and compete with, never truly celebrating my successes, because they made her feel inferior. Neither of them saw the real me. But you know what? I did not see the real me either. Not until I was forced to stand alone. And now I know my worth. Not because a man validates me, not because friends approve of me, but because I built something with my own hands and heart. Because I took the lowest moment of my life and turned it into a launching pad. If you are watching this and you have been betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. One where you get to be the main character. You do not need their apology to move on. You do not need their regret to feel whole. You just need to believe that you deserve better. and then go out and build it. My grandmother's money gave me a head start, but my determination gave me the finish. I am Ivy. I am 29 years old. I own 2 bakeries, a condo, and a future I created myself. And honestly, that is worth more than any man who did not know what he had. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever turned a painful experience into something positive? Have you ever rebuilt your life after someone let you down? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know your experiences might inspire someone else who is going through a hard time right now. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this video. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend going through a tough time. Maybe a family member who is doubting themselves. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you strength in your struggles, courage in your choices, and the wisdom to know that your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. Take care of yourselves. And remember, never depend on anyone but yourself.